Bumper, que necesito una bomba balote. Una bomba balote. Ba, ba, ba.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean-American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome to The Janchi Show. This is episode 11. We are so happy to have you guys all back again. We are excited that we've passed the double digits and are moving toward triple digits.
Triple digits,
and then
only
quadruple
2 years away.
digits. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I'm your host, Nathan, along with KJ and Patrick. How are you guys doing?
Patrick.
Hola, mi gente.
Hello.
¿Cómo están?
Hello. Bien.
Or as they say in Korea, 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
여러분, 안녕하세요.
And we are The Janchi Show. And Patrick, what does The Janchi Show mean?
That's also true.
The Janchi Show means 3 Korean-American adoptees who talk about their Korean identities. Just kidding. That was a great setup.
But what does Janchi mean, Patrick?
Right.
Janchi part of The Janchi Show.
Janchi means a multitude of things. We've narrowed it down to celebrating and feasting and joining together in a big group of people to have a laugh, have a drink, and share a good time. And that's what we do on the show, is we do all of those things in a different order every time, kind of. Well, no, actually it's the same order. Yeah, but that's what we do here, and that's what Janchi means, and I think that's what we've accomplished so far through 11 episodes.
So we are filming this episode 1 week before Election Day, November 3rd, and we are very excited. We are casting our votes. I casted mine today, and I think the other guys are casting yours soon. Are you guys, you're heading out to do that soon?
Yeah, I'm going out tomorrow, both my fiance and I after work, I think. We're going to be heading to the polls.
Missouri doesn't have early voting.
Oh, lucky you.
Is it,
So
though?
what's your plan then so you have to go, or did you do an absentee mail-in?
I did not do an absentee mail-in, and so I have to go.
And stand in line.
Yep. But I'm going to try to go like at an off time because my work is pretty flexible, so hopefully I won't be there for like multiple hours on end. It will just be a few hours, hopefully, or maybe no hours. We'll see.
Patrick said something about his area having that online check status thing. Does Missouri have anything like that?
I don't know. Here's the deal. I am not a great American citizen.
You are definitely a good American citizen.
Second election that I will have attempted to vote in. The first election, I didn't get my stuff. I didn't check my registration, so I stood in line at the place that I was going to register or was going to vote at in 2016. Stood in line, did the thing, and then I got up to the place to get my ballot, and they were like, "Okay, let me, do the thing." And they're like, "Oh, you're not registered to vote," and I was like, "What?" So I just wasn't registered. So if you have not, if you are lazy like me, go check your registration. Even if you think that you are registered, go check your registration and make sure that everything is good to go, because there's nothing worse than standing in line for hours for it to come to nothing in the end. Like, that is so defeating. So don't
Did they give you a
be like
sticker when
me.
you left?
I don't know. I don't even deserve a sticker. So yeah.
Oh, that's so bad.
Well,
You had to wait
especially
in
this
line,
year, there's
too.
been super long wait times at a lot of pretty much every state. So
Definitely check your status. That is a really good tip, though.
you
for
can do
very
that at
reason.
vote.org. You can do that at multiple places. If you just type in "How do I check my voter registration" into Google, you'll get a lot of things. Don't click on the sponsored links. Scroll down a little bit. Click on some other ones, but definitely get that checked out. Another thing I think that's really important for people going out to vote is to know where that they should be going to vote, or at least having an idea of the places that are available. KJ, or do you have a lot of options, or are you limited there?
I don't know. Yep, I am the model of an uninformed citizen. This is literally just my older brothers tell me what the fork I should be doing to be voting.
Well, good thing they have a thing called the internet where you can go look it all up. We have a lot of people telling us where to go and when to go and all that stuff. I mean, I even ruined my first ballot actually, and by accidentally filled out my wife's ballot. So I had to request a replacement, and they sent it within 2 days actually. So after I made the request, it arrived 2 days later. So it was really quick. And we both got our replacements, and everything has been cast. So, but yeah, I was really impressed at how easy and quick that was. It actually says it on the back of the envelope, even if there's a mistake or error, go to this website. So,
Nathan, did you know who you were voting for besides the presidential election?
I didn't. I always go through as much information as I can through different websites and see who's standing for what and how long they've been on, the things. We have different things other than that. We have, the assemblymen and things like that. And we had 3 votes for the unified Orange County school district. So they actually split the district this year. So there was a new area. So I had to do some research on these people because I don't know anything about the school districts and the people who are on the board. So I had to go see what they were all about. And so I did my research that way. And same thing with the propositions. I mean, you hear about the propositions and you get 50,000 mailers in the in the mail about vote for this one, vote for that one, or you get the phone calls. And so it's very misleading because all the mailers look, oh yeah, this sounds good, and then you get a mailer opposing it, and you goes, oh wait, this kind of sounds good too. Yeah, and so you really have to do your research to see why they're talking about this, and what really is the key points.
I just wanted to throw out back when the primaries were happening, myself and some friends found isidewith.com, which is a nonprofit bipartisan organization where you can go and, like any good millennial, take a quiz. And it's a really long quiz, and it asks you a whole bunch of questions. I feel like the responses are fairly nuanced. And then based on that, it matches you with candidates that you probably like ideologically side with. It doesn't really say a whole lot about like their track record as potential office holders or whatever, or maybe it does and I just haven't looked into it. But I think that I Side With is a really great way to kind of think about the issues first and then align yourself with people instead of going kind of the opposite way. And for me, I think as a Korean-American adoptee who was recently made aware of minority status, that was a really helpful tool because I was able to think through a lot of things, and I was like, okay, I know this is where I stand, and this is where I stand, and this is where I stand, and this is what I believe. But then I came to some questions that I found myself butting up against what I was raised in. So being raised in Dallas, and just kind of Texas in general, like I feel like I was raised fairly Republican, fairly conservative, whatever, especially when things, when it comes to the economics or defense or like all that stuff. And then, I've grown up since I was born and become a more well-rounded.
Every year I get
yeah,
older.
Exactly. So I've become a more well-rounded human being, and I think about things differently. And so once it's a lot of questions that you can go through, but when I dug deep and found those later ones, I was like, oh, I have some thinking and some re-identifying to do with myself, just because of all of that and the amount of change that I had done, And so it was a good tool for me to think about, like, okay, so I think about myself differently, and then this is then how I kind of take my beliefs and follow them to their logical conclusion into my political being, not just my own, like how I self-identify.
And that's good. I mean, the whole fact of actually exploring that, and like you said, taking a little quiz, finding out which things are more important to you, and finding which sides you like, which candidates you like. I think that's very important because a lot of people do not know which side they stand on, and I feel they're being persuaded by social media or by just friends or family or neighbors. And I think everyone should really learn to find their own voice and find what is important to themselves first before listening to other people. So
yeah, it's really hard right now too, just because, like you said, Nathan, there's a lot of other influencing things that are showing you stuff that you may think you want to see. You don't know that you don't want to see that. So it's nice to know that there are resources like, what was it?
isidewith.com.
isidewith.com. Like that. I think I'm going to hop on there just to see kind of what comes up when I take that quiz. How long was the quiz?
It's long. And because it goes through everything, and I was like,
Right.
like I said, I was just like, oh, I've never thought about these things before. And so you get like the yes, the no, the like yes but or no but, and like it's fairly nuanced. And then you can like stop at some point, and it'll just be like, here's what it matches up, or you can just keep going until you run out of questions. And so I was like, I got nothing better to do in March because COVID,
Right.
and I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just do this deep dive. And so it was really interesting to go through that. And like I said, it really made me wrestle with that. And the fact that it then says like, here are your beliefs and here's where you stand for the president, for your governor, for like state, like, state officials, local officials, even, that it's really good. And I think too, like, I'm always like, nope for president. Like I would love to have Leslie Knope for president, but also I would love to have Leslie Knope for my local officials and my state officials. And that like for me, in my particular point of life, the president feels like a very far away thing. And like, obviously the office of the president has a lot of power, but like in the way that my life is shaped out, he doesn't actually have that much effect over my day-to-day life. But like my state officials, my local officials, they do really deeply affect my day-to-day life, and so being able to take a quiz that's ideology first and political views first, and then find candidates to say, okay, here's how you can match it up. Even if you're thinking about voting third party, that may be more influential. Like, if voter turnout is really bad for presidential elections, it's even worse for local elections, I'm sure. And so like, if you believe in third parties and you really want there to be more than a two-party system in America, like local officials can be a really great way to get into that, and that can be a good way to affect change for what you think is the best for the most people, like kind of in your sphere of influence.
It's just a great way to start. Like it's so hard to figure out where to just start that journey, especially at the local level. Like you get all the news about like what's going on in D.C. with the president, with the Senate, with the House, and I don't think unless you're really tuned in to your local news, like I subscribe to the Indy Star, and I just started doing that because I'm like, I don't get any local news outside of my own eyeballs and earballs, So I do think, I appreciate you harping on the importance of that local level, these officials just getting to know, because it's really tough to get started. And if you can even find one resource that can point you in a direction, go for it.
And the local level, like you said, has a lot of influence on your day to day too, more so than sometimes the president. So finding out what they're voting on, what they're making you do, and what they're making you not do is kind of important, especially if you have kids or if you got have to go to school, or even simple things like finding. Like when I got some energy rebates and things like that. Like I was really appreciative of the measures that they pushed for more, conservation and stuff. So that helped me out. Put some money in my pocket. So I was happy about that. But yeah, so moral of the story: get out there and vote.
And vote for more than just the president.
Yeah,
Yes.
vote for more than president. Find about your local stuff. Just learn as much as possible. Your voice. Your voices, this is your time. So,
especially with 1 week left, I will again plug isidewith.com, because if you don't know anything about your local officials, that's a great way and a great resource to go learn about them quickly. If you're going to go wait in line, then you probably have 4 hours to take that quiz. So just take the quiz and learn and then it'll be fresh in your mind when you get up to the box. So
Yep. It's not a perfect resource, but it's a great place to start.
I go to Ballotpedia just for the informational stuff. It doesn't really have, it pretty much just has what's on your ballot and information about that. Who's siding with it, who's not siding with it, what happens, what does it mean to vote for yes or vote no? Because sometimes they really word these things, very confusingly. Like a yes vote repeals it, or vetoes it. No, I mean, there's all these things that change based on how you're voting it. Some people think the yes vote is a good thing when they actually was the no vote that they wanted.
Right.
So definitely go check out Ballotpedia as well, just to get some insight. For example, I found out today that the Mississippi is changing, or is on the ballot to change their state flag. And Rhode Island is on the ballot to change the name of their state from Rhode Island and the Providence Plantations. So they're trying to change it to Rhode Island only. So there's some interesting measures out there. So
And if you're one of our global listeners, thanks for hanging with us. We're
Yeah.
gonna get to the interview now.
If you
Yeah, we do have a really great guest on today. She is our, I like to call her our first organic fan. First person who reached out to us naturally to come onto the show. She's a nurse. She's an Oregonian, and these are all things that we're going to learn about. Very cultured person. We welcome Melody Lorts to the show. So stick around. After the break, we're going to talk with her.
Bum, 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 bum.
We are here with Melody Lorts today. Melody, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
great.
I've been better. My allergies are really bad.
Aw.
And they only, they were fine earlier today. And then as we got closer to recording time, it was like, hey, this is going to be a really tough one for you. And I was like, why, body?
Aw.
What did you say back? Or what did it say back?
Nothing.
It just
Jeez,
sent
a chew.
it just sent a swarm on to you, a swarm of allergies.
I hate those.
All right. Well, we'll leave you to your allergies, KJ. Whenever you want to jump back in, we will welcome you
Golly,
back in.
thanks.
It'll be okay because you'll just edit all your sneezes out. So
Well, this is a great start to the interview. Probably one of the most fun starts that I've ever had. So we're already off, or we're already off to a good start. Melody, thank you again for joining us. To kick off these interview sections, like we always do, I want to ask you to just give us a little bit of brief background on your adoption story and growing up, where you grew up at.
Sure. So kind of to go back before I was adopted, my parents had 4, as we would put it at my house, homegrown children, and they were all boys. And I think it was my parents' pastor at the time. They were about to adopt a little girl from South Korea too. And my dad comes home and my mom's crying on the bed, and my dad asks her what's going on, and she picks up this dress that she had gotten. She had a hope chest, and she was like going through it to give clothes to the pastor's wife because she has 4 boys. She's never going to use these little girls' clothing, and she's crying there on the bed and being like, we're never going to have someone to put these in. And my dad, just without losing a step, was like, well, we could adopt. And after that, they went down the process of adopting my sister from Seoul. And then I think, like I've heard many times from other Korean adoptees, they realized that they really wanted my sister to have a sister, but also a sibling who could relate to her. And so 2 years later, they adopted me, and I was from Pohang, which is near Busan. But yeah. Oh, I was also adopted from Holt International, which I wanted to ask you guys, is that like the same thing as other adoption agencies under a different name? Because I feel like I've heard Holt be attached to like other adoption agencies that were under a different name, and I just didn't recognize it. And I wasn't sure if that was not true or true. I thought I'd ask the experts.
Not experts.
I don't know about experts. I want to go on record about I don't questioning the expert label. Appreciated, but just want to step
I
in
don't
there.
appreciate it. I want people to at me and be like, hey, you're
That's
an
true.
expert.
That's
No,
a good
I'm
point.
not.
That's a good
that's
point.
completely wrong, KJ.
I'm so dumb.
So
For me,
KJ
I
was-
was. Oh, go ahead.
Because
Yes,
KJ was
Nathan,
adopted
please
through
answer
Holt.
for me.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
So he would be the expert.
Well, so technically for me and like my sister and I, we were adopted through, on the state side, it's called Bethany Christian Services, but it was Holt that I guess they liaised through to do that, even though Bethany has their own like adoption service. So
Okay.
like I've just started recently inquiring about getting records and stuff from them, and I don't know. They've asked me for stuff, but I don't know if they now go to Holt and ask them for stuff, or if they're technically like a subsidy of Holt. I don't know, but I'm assuming that there's a lot of overlap with them. That's my expert answer, which is I don't know how expert it is.
I'll also say, growing up in Portland, because I was that, I feel like at least in the 80s, and maybe, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, I felt like in the 80s there was this like huge South Korean adoption, just like inundation into Oregon, at least. And when I heard you guys talking on another episode about, is it Minnesota known as the 10,000 adoptees or whatever, the land
Yeah.
of 10,000 adoptees. I always thought Oregon was like the center of adoption because I thought that's where Holt was started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to have to look into, unless you guys know.
I do know that it was started in Oregon.
Oh, okay. Because that was like back in the 50s, right? Or right after the Korean War.
Yeah.
Story on it. We've actually wanted to get somebody on here from Holt because they do have a very large family and lots of people involved, lots of adopted children as well within their own family. So I always thought that would be good to get somebody on there just to get a little backstory about the company itself and what they were involved in and what they're even currently doing now, I guess. But KJ, you were adopted through Holt. Do you know much about it?
I read a whole book about it when I was younger, and I remember almost none of it. So,
Okay.
like I said, 0% expert.
Thank you for your input.
Yep. It was. I sounded much more eloquent when you were answering for me.
I was adopted through Dylan, so I don't know much about other than from what I've read as well. So. And at one point, I know that the Korean government made regulations where there had to be a Korean a Korean company involved in the adoptions. So Holt and Dylan and all these other companies from the United States had to collaborate and have some sort of contracts or subsidiaries with these other companies that were Korean owned for it to work out legally. So a lot of the times, I think the other companies in Korea. You'll hear different names. You won't actually probably hear like Holt or Dylan. You'll hear like Eastern and other things like that. So, yeah.
We all have different pieces of the puzzle, and we can just each one throw something out. We put it together, and then we have the information. We're like Voltron. We come together and form a greater whole. I like it.
Nice.
But that's what we do on the show too. We learn. So I like that. I like where we just went with that. And thank you for asking. Thank you for turning it around and asking us. You know, it spurs that deeper conversation. So you talked a little bit about having, your 4 homegrown brothers, and then also having an adopted sister. You might have said, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but you might have said, your approximate or your proximity in age to them. And the reason I'm asking this question is because I know KJ's parents, they had 2 kids of their own, but their proximity was very distant. So that informed the relationship a little bit. I was wondering how the proximity in age to your step half brothers. You're right. They're your brothers.
Homegrown siblings?
Homegrown brothers. I'm just wondering how that proximity in age, if that played a role in the relationship that you had with them.
So I think most of us are about 2 years apart. My sister and the youngest brother, they're less than 2 years apart. They're about like 15 months apart. And I know growing up, they were really close just because, similar to, I think that Rebecca talked about this in her podcast episode, because you guys were in school together, really. And honestly, I think being in school really does kind of dictate how close you are to your siblings when you're in that school age. And so my sister and the youngest boy, Paul, they were really close. They did so much together. They even traveled together. And to this day, I think that they are between, I guess, brother and sister, they're the closest. Whereas myself, I think because I was the youngest, and I don't know if any of you are youngest, but when everyone's left the home, you kind of change from being the child to being kind of like the roommate. And my parents very quickly signed off on me on being just like by myself. Like, they didn't teach me to drive. They were like, we taught 5 other kids. We're not teaching you to drive. So my second oldest brother taught me how to drive.
Interesting.
And I think that just because of the way our upbringing was, in the sense of my 2 oldest brothers had already gone to college when I was still in high school, and then they moved back in. It was that time where they moved back in to save money so they could buy a better place, type of thing. And so my second oldest brother, Glenn, and we became friends then, and we stayed friends. He was in my wedding party as one of he was like my bridesman. I don't know what you would call that. But,
nice.
But yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So I think that for my sister and my brother's relationship, like theirs was so much based off of like being close all through school, whereas like my brother Glenn and I are 8 years apart, and I think we more just became close through him moving back into our house. But honestly, like I was raised very, very Christian, and my brother Glenn and I are probably the only ones who aren't Christian anymore in my family. And that was actually like telling my mom what I didn't believe anymore was probably a huge part of my adulthood. So that's also a reason why I feel like I'm very close to my brother Glenn, is because he very much also supported me on my I guess my religious spiritual pathway.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation to have. I've had a similar conversation, but it was more like small conversations that built up to that. And then it is something that you kind of always revisit, I think, for me at least, where it's
No, mine was terrible. Mine was absolutely terrible.
No.
My mom asked me on Mother's Day of all days. She's
Oh,
like,
wow. Yeah.
yeah. And so my sister
like, by
gives
the
me a really
power
hard
of
time about
holiday
that.
behind me.
I know. My sister's like, why'd you do that on Mother's Day? I was like, she cornered me. My mom and I are very close. Like my friends say it's really weird. Like I told her the first time I kissed a boy. I told her like the first time I like broke up with someone. I told her the first time of everything. And I'm very, very close. And my mom told me once, she's like, I feel like you can't lie to me. And I was like, yeah, I really don't feel like I can. And she was like, okay. Like she was very happy about that.
Welcome to my interrogation room.
Yeah,
Please take a seat.
Who needs a
There's a
lie
plate of
detector
donuts.
now?
I feel like you can't lie.
Me. Here we go. Right.
Who needs an omniscient God when you have my mom? You know?
Exactly.
Break
So you
that
had
list.
So you had a pretty good relationship then growing up with your family? Or
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I would literally say it was like, if I could do a movie or a cartoon, it'd be all in gold light. Like I felt like I had a very golden childhood. Like we lived in the country. We had cows. Like we could climb trees. I felt like a very good childhood growing up.
I like that. Had cows, climbed trees.
Climb
Those
trees.
are two things that I for sure know about for being from the
That's
country
not a
as well.
mental journey that I expected. We had cows. We also climbed trees. I was like, what? What? I expected like goats or chickens. No, we also climbed trees.
I don't know.
That thing that all cows love to do.
I will say Oregon is what I think a lot of people imagine. I think that people imagine a lot of nature, a lot of mountains and trees, and that is really true. Like I said, living in Japan, we called it a concrete forest because there was no nature. It was all concrete. Whereas Oregon is this like, I think the state where they were like, we want to keep the trees around. We're gonna build our towns and our cities around nature also. So
Very cool. So you just talked about, you said that you lived in Japan?
yeah, 2.5 years.
Oh, okay, cool. So I want to get to that, but one of the things that I want to talk about was you said that you related a lot. We talked before we came on here. You said that you related a lot to what my sister said. And something that she talked about was growing up being very drawn to Japanese culture as opposed to Korean culture, like cultural items. And I saw in your guest form that you had said that you loved Japanese culture as well. I was wondering kind of what drew you to that initially, and I feel like maybe potentially informed your decision to live in Japan. So I was just wondering what that was like for you.
So I grew up in a small town. Like I think the town I first grew up in, there was maybe 1,000 people. Like it was very country, very rural. Like I think people would say there was more sheep than people type of thing. And for me, when it came to culture, like I'll say the broader Asian culture, it was mostly what my mother brought in or what I would see through the TV. But even the TV, like I think someone brought up Nickelodeon. Like we didn't have Nickelodeon growing up. We had one of those TVs where you had to change the channel by like cranking it.
Same.
And so for me, the limited amount of Asian culture was mostly Japanese or Chinese. And most of the Chinese culture was the one Chinese restaurant in town that we could go to, and which was the only Asian cuisine in town. And
But was it like deeply Chinese or was it like American Chinese?
it was American Chinese.
Okay, great.
Like, it was so American Chinese. Like, the wontons were this big, and it was like...
And that's
It
where
was-
Panda Express started. So
Exactly. And I will say I still really love that restaurant. It was still one of my favorite ones to go to.
I hear you. I love that type of Chinese food too.
it's definitely my guilty pleasure. I'm just like,
Yeah, I know.
I can get down with this.
The first time I had real Chinese food, because one of my roommates was Australian Chinese, and her mom came and visited us in Japan. I was like, none of this is fried, and none of it is in heavy sauce. Like, this is not Chinese food. And my
Where's the
roommate was
poo-poo
like,
platter?
I know, my roommate was like, Melody, stop being racist. I was like, oh, sorry. I was like, it's what I grew up with.
All I know
My
is orange
friends give
chicken.
me a hard time all the time when it's like, I love PF Chang's. We're like, what? No respecting Asian likes PF Chang's. They go, oh, wait, you're not Asian.
Like, oh, you only
Yeah.
like white meat then.
I will say this, though. I get snobby about Japanese food because of living in Japan. Like, when people tell me they like ramen and they take me to their favorite ramen place, I'm like, it's okay. It's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very picky about ramen, I will say. But you know, like, simple things like not growing up. I think the things that, like, the show and other things that I've fallen upon since you know, COVID, because I feel like a lot of my processing being Korean-American and being a Korean-American adoptee is, you know, being able to see people like me, being able to, you know, have representation. And I remember being that little kid, and my mom for Christmas, like, she was so excited because I don't know if you guys would pick up on this reference, but do you remember the Christie Barbie doll?
Maybe.
No.
I'm not sure.
So basically, like, probably in the late 80s, early 90s, like, Barbie came out with their first, like, kind of Asian ethnic doll. And her name was Christy, and she was from Hawaii. And my mom was so excited because all the other Barbie dolls were basically just blonde, blue-eyed, or, you know, Caucasian. And she was so excited that she went and got my sister these dolls for Christmas. And so I feel like the reason why I was drawn to Japan was so much of the small cultural things I could pick up on that were, you know, Asian, were Japanese anime, or, you know, there was a Japanese food store my mom would go to because my mom would try to, like, bring in Korean food. Like, I remember my mom making bulgogi and, like, making bibimbap
Nice.
and that type of stuff. And she would also, they would sell books, and so she would buy children's books for us. Like, I remember the story about the prince and the princess who met, you know, over the Milky Way and stuff like that.
Very cool. What's your favorite piece of Japanese either media or culture, or something that really stuck with you that from those beginning periods of coming across that?
My favorite thing about Japanese media or culture, I think, is their way of seeing the world, in the sense of, I think that because Japan is so modernized in the sense of, like, these big cities, like not just Tokyo, but Osaka, and, you know, everything's become very digital over there, that they truly do have this huge respect for, like, nature and for life and for, you know, the value in everything that can breathe. And so living there, even though it's all concrete, everyone's, like, patio or balcony is, like, flourishing with, like, green plants. Like, they'll have their own little potted garden. And as much as it's, like, become very, you know, city, like, every little borough you lived in had a natural grocer. So a farmer who would come and bring his farmer's growth, you know, not just him, but, like, all the local farmers would come together and bring their produce to sell. And I really appreciated that. Like,
cool.
I really appreciated how much they still saw value in the earth. And something that I actually saw kind of funny when I first went, but now I'm like, oh, it's really special, is they do these things where you could pay like $100 to $200 in the city, and they would bus you out to the countryside, and you would go and pick, like, blueberries or strawberries or persimmons, and they would feed you, or maybe you would have an onsen or all these other things attached to it. But I really liked that. At first I was like, wow, you're paying $150 to pick blueberries?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. I was like,
Right.
there is a market in Oregon for this.
Yeah, that's right. It's like it's a farmer's field trip.
Yeah,
That's kind of cool.
it
That's neat.
is. But it's because, because the city is so big now and nature is so far away seemingly to them that, it is worth it to pay to go and have those experiences with your children.
Sure. So while you were in Japan, you were out there for 2 years. During that time when you were there, did you start to be more immersed into the Korean culture since you were closer? Is that something that you looked for specifically while you were there?
I think that, growing up, I was that Korean kid who really, really kind of rejected her Korean side. Like, I really didn't, when I decided to go to Japan to teach English, I had a bunch of people be like, well, why aren't you going to South Korea? And I kid you not, I was like, why would I go there? And they were like, well, you're Korean adopted. And I never. And I it was like, it was just like over
White
my
people everywhere.
head, over my head. And it wasn't until this year that I realized, oh, that's why those people asked me that question. Like, I'm adopted from Korea. Well, duh, why didn't I go teach English in Korea? But I think that for me, like, so much of, my rejection from, like, truly rejecting Korean culture was, I just didn't get it when I went to Japan. I was not in the mind space. I just thought, oh, I love the culture. Like, I looked at it as a white person. Like, I was like, well, I just like the Japanese culture. I like the language. I like the food. That I never even thought about. I didn't even know this is how much I knew about, like, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese relationships. Like, I had no idea until I went to Japan that they had, like, this terrible relationship, like, in the back in history.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a Korean Japanese woman, and she was like, oh, are people treating you okay? And I was like, yeah, why? And she was like, she's like, oh, growing up, I would be teased, I would be made fun of, like, because a lot of it, she said, was centered around, kimchi and, like, her food, and that people teased her about smelling bad because of that. And I told her, for me, my own experience was I only had good experiences. I could speak Japanese pretty fluently and with a good accent. And so I actually never had any type of issue with that over there. No one was like, you're Korean. No, I never had that.
That's nice. It's nice when people don't just shout in your face that that's what you are. I really respect people when they're not just shouting, "You're Korean." I know.
I will tell you this weird out of body experience I had though in Japan, because I don't know if any of you can really, like, if you spent enough, like, for me, it was one of the first times. I mean, I went to Korea, but not for very long, when I was in high school with my family. But in Japan, being surrounded by people who looked like me for that long, I remember, and the weird thing was, both my roommates and my friends were all Asian over there, but they were from other countries. So one was from England, one was from Australia. Actually, two were from England. But anyways, either way, we were all sitting on the train, and kind of the politeness of the culture is to not talk, not be on your cell phone, don't eat, those types of things. And so we're sitting there quietly, and we started
What an
hearing...
odd train ride.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
It's just like the optics of that as an American. You're like, don't talk, and also don't look at your phone. Like, what else
But
is there to
not
do?
even
Just
that. They
stare out
found
the
it.
window?
They were so polite that when you're reading a book, it's typically covered. You have, like, a paper covering around it so as not to be rude. Or a privacy. It's a privacy thing too.
Interesting.
Okay.
That's like with
And
the drinking culture in Korea. You cover your drink when you're going to take a drink in front of older people. I get it.
So we were sitting there being polite, following the customs of Japan, and we hear, and I will say this, people who speak English speak very loud when they're visiting other countries.
True.
So we were sitting there and we
Guilty.
hear these people speaking really loud English, and we're like, oh, we're like looking around. And we all spot them at the same time. And it was this group of Asian people speaking, and we all look at each other at the same time, and we're like, they're Asian. And we all just like start laughing because we realize, oh, we're all Asian too. And we speak English fluently, and yeah. It was
Wait,
a
but
really
you're-
funny moment.
Were the people that you were with, they weren't also adopted though, were they?
No, but they were born in the countries they lived in. So they
Right,
were
right,
born
right.
in England or born in Australia. So
That is amazing. I also think it's amazing that we've had back-to-back hilarious train stories on the show. So, in back-to-back episodes. So I know we're doing something right. You guys can think about that. Go check out episode 10 and see what I'm talking about there. So that's really cool, and I feel like we've bounced from one point to Japan and back and forth. So I want to know, before we get into the main thrust of what I'm hoping that we talk about, is how you go from, discovering this culture and growing up in Oregon to Japan. Like what actually took you out there, and what were you doing out there, and then what kind of brought you back?
So I think that honestly, one of the main reasons I wanted to live in Japan was, so growing up, my grandma and grandpa were missionaries to Papua New Guinea. And so, at a very young age, I'd celebrated Christmas in like Thailand, New Zealand, Papua. And it just had instilled into me this heart for travel and international travel specifically. And my senior year of college, I had the opportunity of doing a photography kind of not practicum, but capstone in Japan. I was able to spend 3 months of my college semester there, and that really ignited that love of the culture and more so wanting to live internationally. I think I saw the value of, I think that part of it being, looking different than my whole family practically, and living in this town where, the only other people who looked like me were typically adopted also. It made me just like want to live in another country and see how they lived. And, coming from that, I do think it's really important, and I think it's a valuable experience to experience life outside of America. I think sometimes as Americans, we can get very myopic in our viewpoints.
Yes.
And I think that, whatever experiences we can have in other cultures will just help us broaden our viewpoint and see that, one path may lead, one path may work for you, but another path might work better for another person. And it doesn't make it better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So having that experience now, and then you come home and you're doing what you do now, and then also looking back on your growing up, and you talked about, rejecting that Korean part of yourself, of your identity, which I feel like is something I can relate to, and I know that other adoptees can relate to as well. Mixing those things together and taking that whole like congregation of experiences, what has now prompted you this year, or why was now the right time to start looking into that? After having all of these other experiences, what made now, or what prompted you to start this journey?
So can I tell a story from when I was a kid first? That kind
Absolutely.
No.
of. Okay, KJ, I will. No.
Hey, easy allergy, man.
I want to share why I kind of the instigatory reason why I rejected my Korean side. So when I was younger, do you guys remember the
Wow.
Oh.
And you call me
Who
allergy
has
man?
allergies?
Oh,
Who's
sorry.
the
I thought I
allergies?
muted. I swear I thought I muted my
definitely
mic.
did
I'm
not
so
mute it.
That's
sorry.
really funny.
I'm
No,
so
that means
sorry.
that's unfortunate because Zencaster uses voice over
Well, my
IP
interface
and,
is
like,
like
recording,
blacked
so,
out, and I
like,
don't want to touch it and like lose everything that I'm doing right now.
Sure.
So I'm like, I can just mute on the software,
really
and it'll be
funny.
good. But it did not. It was not good. It was bad. Oh, my apologies. Please continue.
So Do you guys remember the talk show? And I will say this because I will say my mom will probably listen to this. I was not allowed to watch this show. I was watching it when I wasn't
Somebody
supposed
gonna
to
get in
be.
trouble.
Surprise.
And actually, as much as my mom thought I couldn't hide things from her, I definitely could. But
You'll be getting
more,
a call later.
right? Maury Povich, is it? Maury Povich?
Yep.
Oh
Is
yeah.
it?
Oh yeah.
So I
The Maury Show,
secretly was watching an episode of that, and it just happened to be on adoptees, and it just happened to be on adoptees meeting their biological parents and the relationship that had for them. And what stuck out to me was this one girl, and it wasn't transracial, so it was all different types of adoptees, but what stuck out to me was this one girl who came on the show because she had met her biological mother, but the relationship side of it was very complicated, and she didn't know how to handle that her biological mom wanted to have more of a motherly relationship than she wanted. Like for her, she felt like, she had a mom, that wasn't why she was necessarily wanting to meet her biological mother. And for me, I think I was an early teen, maybe, 12 or 13. Watching that, I was like, that looks like the worst. That looks terrible. I don't ever want to deal with that. I don't ever want to have that be. And I think part of me, because, and I'm sure you guys have heard this or possibly felt it, but my parents never said anything to the effect of being like, you need to reject you're not Korean, they never said that. Like my
Right.
parents were very supportive, and if anything, my mom was trying to draw that out of us more so than, us. At one point they asked us if we wanted to meet our biological parents, and we both were like, no, we have our parents, like we don't need to do that. And I think that for me, so much of not wanting to look into my Korean side was based off of this like false identity of feeling like if I reject my Korean, then it means I'm more loyal to my adoptive parents. And so, from a very young age, it was really weird. I have really vivid dreams. And so this is a really weird story, but all the way up until I went to Santa Barbara, which is the most diverse place. This is the first diverse place I moved to as an adult. I dreamt that I was a white woman. Like my dream self was a white woman. And I remember distinctly like going to college and meeting all these like people, all these people from all different backgrounds. I remember meeting these people from Spain. I remember meeting these people from Japan, and just like this very diverse culture coming from Oregon, which I don't know if you know, but Portland is the whitest city in America. And so if Portland is the whitest city, well, you can imagine what their suburbs are like or what the countryside is like.
Right.
And so going from that to Southern California, that actually has a very rich and diverse Asian population, was very culture shock for me. And I felt very much like, part of me was like, oh, I really want to meet more Asian people. But then another part of me was like, oh, you're going to trick them. They're going to think you're Asian, but you're not really Asian.
I
And
know
like,
that.
I had these experiences where I would meet these people and they'd be like, they would talk about these racialized experiences that they'd have. And I would just nod there, be like, oh yeah. And in my head, I was like, I don't know what they would talk about more so. They would talk about things like, oh yeah, my mom got mad at me because I got an A-. And I was like, my mom would be so happy if I got an A-. Like I couldn't identify with them. And so on some ways, because I wanted to, I just was like, oh yeah, moms, they're rough.
That sounded like a statement came right out of my sister's mouth. Even the way you said it was like my sister. That was crazy. I was like, whoa.
So it was just like this very identity difference. And what, coming back, not to go off on a tangent, but like to come back to like what made me kind of finally face being Korean and being Asian was so I'm really into disc golf, which is another Oregon thing, I think. Actually, California has a lot of disc golf. But I really, and if you don't know what it is, it's basically golf, but we use discs, and each disc is just like
Frisbees.
a club.
Weighted frisbees, not ultimate frisbees.
I wasn't even gonna
but,
say
like,
It's
anything.
not ultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I
But
played
like,
disc
so
golf.
my
Sure
one of
you
my
did,
coworkers,
cool guy.
one of my coworkers just like super got into disc golf, and I give him a lot of crap for it. But that's like one of those things where like a disc golfer is gonna say discs. A layperson is gonna say, "Oh, you play with frisbees."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
but it's
exactly.
weighted frisbees. It's like a whole thing. You can
Yes.
have a whole set
Yeah.
of discs, just like you can have a whole set of clubs. I just thought that
You know,
I should
I like
clarify
to really
that.
round out my nerdiness, you know, start with anime, you know, Japanese culture, disc golf, like it's all in that nerdy realm. And and after the murder of George Floyd, you know, there was this whole outbreak in this social cultural awareness of what it means to be a minority, I think. And it obviously I think hit a lot of people, and really awakened a lot of people to what it means to be a minority in America, or not even in America, what it means to be a minority in a white majority. And for me, I became very present online with the disc golf community. I think that I can identify with Rebecca. I'm very brash. I have the confidence of a white woman. And I think that,
You have an inner Karen, even if you're not Karen presenting.
right, except when you say Karen. And I think that, you know, I made all these connections with other minority disc golfers because we felt like the disc golf community, which is very, very, very male white dominant, was not responding to the call. We felt like they weren't stepping up where the moment was challenging them to meet. And so I met this Korean-American guy from New York City, and we just started talking about the issues. And he was like, "Oh, you're adopted?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he tells me this story about how his parents immigrated here from Korea, and how they had difficulty, you know, getting pregnant, and they had him, and they really wanted to have more children, and so they wanted to adopt. And, you know, he said that they went to try to adopt, they wanted to adopt a Korean child, and they went to try to adopt, and they couldn't afford it. And that just like broke my heart. Like, I think that, you know, when he told me that, I didn't react right away. I just was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I think probably like 3 or 4 days later, I just started crying because I realized that there was this lie inside of me that I was believing, that no one told me this lie. It was my own lie. And I think it was this way of feeling like I could accept who I was that I thought that Koreans didn't want Korean children. And I had this lie where inside of me, I was like, "Oh, I was adopted by white American people because Korean people don't want their Korean orphans or their Korean children." And when he told me that, kind of my world shattered a little, and I realized, you know, not that my life was, it wasn't all of a sudden that I was like, you know, how could my parents do this to me? Not at all. Like, I was still very, you know, grateful for my childhood, and I love my family and my parents, but it did make me realize, you know, if this core belief that I had growing up with wasn't true, then what other lies had I been telling myself that were not necessarily true either? And so that kind of made me go down the route. And I forget, I think one of you posted, or on some Asian community Instagram, someone posted, you know, "How did you find us? Like, what are you hashtagging? What are you looking for?" And I literally this is how I found Janchi Show. I literally hashtagged Korean-American adoptee, you know, transracial adoptee. I just like looked up those things on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know how they do it there, but that's literally how I found your guys' podcast. So yeah, I think that that's kind of where it brought me to, just like looking more into how I identify as a Korean American, how I identify as an adoptee and a transracial adoptee. And, you know, that was probably the second hardest conversation with my mom ever being, was me telling her, you know, I'm having a hard time with this, and I'm looking into my adoption. It doesn't mean I'm looking into meeting my biological parents, but that, that there is a lot of rejection and guilt still inside of me, even though I think up until a few months ago, I was semi oblivious. I wouldn't say I was fully oblivious, but I was pretty, you know, I put it all into a box and didn't really look into it.
Um, First off, thank you for sharing your story, and for going to a place of emotional honesty and vulnerability. I think you bring just the the courage and bravery to do that brings a lot of value to the show. So thanks. And I really identify with a lot of your journey. I remember specifically when I was 16 or so, kind of giving up, quote unquote, on my Korean identity. And I think maybe in the same way that you dreamed that you were a white girl for however long, I think there's a part of me that was like, it's easier to assimilate, because I've already been rejected, if you will, by my Korean family for whatever reason. And I guess I'm considered special needs. I was a special needs adoption. And so like, I was like, oh, so maybe it's tied into those things, and whatever. I don't know the family history or family situation from my Korean family. So it was easier for me to assimilate. It was easier for me to think about being just like, and I've said this before, like Texan or Christian or whatever, and just falling in line with those parts of my identity. And then I think, yeah, there is a uniqueness post George Floyd where all of us, because of COVID, were sitting at home. All of us were sitting on our phones, and so there was a unique moment that, because of just the diaspora of media, George Floyd's death was such a flashpoint where everyone was looking. And I think that really it woke a lot of Asians up, and kind of other minorities, and especially other white people, to be like, holy crap, this is still happening in America. And so there was like this kind of heightened attention, right? And somewhere along the way, like, I realized, part of my own journey of this, because this show was really, I think, born out of the three of our reaction to, or at least I think Patrick and I's reaction to George Floyd, was that even though I don't think of myself as Korean, the world still sees me as Korean. And part of the beauty and the blessing of this show, and I think you coming on here, because this journey, just from what you've been posting on Instagram, what you've been sharing with us, is so new to you, is that we are collectively realizing that even though we don't think of ourselves as, the most Korean, uh, we are Korean enough, and we are Asian enough, and that is good and is valid. And there's no, I think we have removed ourselves from being, or at least I have removed myself from being a gatekeeper for how Korean I get to be, or how Korean I have to be to feel like, yeah, no, I'm actually Korean, and for me to not feel dishonest anytime I try to speak Korean, and not feel embarrassed anytime I get my Korean wrong, or that there's a real blessing in that. So, yeah, all that to say, thanks for coming on, and I enjoyed your story, and I really relate. No, there wasn't a question there.
Honestly, I was really nervous. I'm still nervous, but I was nervous because I was like, shit. Oh, sorry. Crap. All the people
I'm
they're
keeping
having
that in
on
there.
are like famous / people they know. And I even like was telling my friend last night, and she was like, why do they want you on? And I was like, I don't know.
So to that point, and to what KJ just said, I think to summed it up really beautifully. Melody, you coming on as our guest, and I don't think I had this realization until KJ just spoke so eloquently right there. I think it really is a full circle journey for all of us here, even Jerry sitting there silently, and especially for me. So I found Dear Asian Americans by just searching, by just going on and searching for something. And I found his podcast, eventually became a guest on his podcast, where Nathan and KJ were also guests, where we now have Jerry's like, let's put you guys together and do a show about adoptees. And now we're doing this show, and then we're trying to reach people. We want we want to reach other adoptees that aren't just like the famous people or whoever, you know. We want to be able to share all the stories. But then you even said you found us because you searched the hashtag. So I feel like that really is kind of a full circle for me, at least, and for this journey, to know that everything that we're trying to do here with the show, and I think all of the stories for Korean adoptees specifically, and then all adoptees in general, this type of stuff and this type of content is important, because if you would have searched that in August, you wouldn't have found our show. You might have found another adoptee show, and there are a lot of good ones out there. But I really appreciate the fact that you gave us the opportunity to come in and share your story and to share with us, especially like that profound moment of realization for you to even go on this journey. You know, that's that's an incredible story, and it might seem like a small moment to some, but as an adoptee specifically, like that's what my journey has been like. It's been this one moment. There's one moment or these couple moments that just happened and were flashpoints for me to go on this. So yeah, I don't have a question either. Thank you. I figured I figured Nathan was about to jump in, but thank you again.
I think that the thing that's so wonderful about this is, Melody, you're, I think, the first guest who we've had on the show that we haven't reached out to, that you did find us. And in my experience, and I'm sure Nathan Patrick can attest to this, is like we felt the same way guesting on Jerry's show as you have expressed feeling guesting on ours. Like,
Yes.
who are we that we would be guests on a podcast? Like, being a guest on a podcast puts you on this pedestal. You're like, oh, I have so many followers. I have so many things
Yeah.
to plug. And so the unique thing, right, about Jerry's show, and that I think the heart of what we all experienced and wanted to continue is, like, even though, like, anyone can start a podcast, and literally everyone is starting their own podcast. So let's just like remove that. Like, it's cool, it's great, but like that's like now most people
Yeah.
are riding bikes or driving cars. You know, like it's not like that.
Not like we opened
Like,
a
it's-
casino or something.
Right? Yeah.
No, but I want to say this is that like almost every episode has made me cry, because every episode has had a moment where I'm like, oh, I felt that, like I've experienced that,
Yeah.
like I've been there, like, and so I think that, I love podcasts, and like you guys said, there's a lot of transracial adoptee podcasts out there, but there was never a podcast where, oh man, I think you guys were talking about like, and it's silly stuff, not even like Korean stuff. You're like, what's your favorite Doritos? And I'm like, I want to answer this right now, and it is Cool Ranch. It is Cool Ranch.
Oh man, spicy nacho.
We haven't had the Dorito conversation in a few episodes.
And I remember when she
Anyways.
commented on it, I was like, yes, see,
Yeah.
Cool Ranch is good.
And that's
Yeah.
like literally like when you guys are talking on, not to just go off about your podcast, but there are moments where I'm like, oh, I wish COVID wasn't happening. I wish Janchi Show could have like a Janchi get together. And to me, I'm like, I would love to meet Rebecca. I feel like so much of what she talked about, I could identify. Like when she was like, even her being like, yeah, I'm not really on Instagram. I have like 100 followers. I was like, oh yeah, me too. Me too. I was like, that's the type of people I want to meet, recluses who are Asian nerds. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I feel like you guys get along really well. 100%.
I think the thing is, like, being adopted and being transracially adopted, like there's a lot in our lives that innately just tells us, whether it's ourselves, it's the lies or the half truths that we tell ourselves, or just like the things that we experience. It's just like that we are not enough, or that someone devalued us, and so we had to be picked up by somebody else who decided they were going to value us, right? And so like you hear a lot, especially in America, about like what family means or what family is supposed to mean, right? And so there's just like, I love that you're on the show, because and for any future Korean adoptee who wants to be on the show, we are choosing you, and we are valuing you, and we want you here, right? And that we this is a space where there is no translation. It's just like, oh, we get that. I've heard that. I've been there. Like if it's about your favorite Doritos flavor or your favorite like 80s, 90s anime that you watched because that was all you had growing up, or whatever that is, right? And so we're, I mean, really just so grateful to
to be able to amplify and hopefully build a small community around Korean adoptees, and specifically like Korean American adoptees, right? That it's just so nice. And so just to have somebody on the show and to just be able to tell our own stories, yeah, it's our way of giving value, and you being here, like Patrick said, gives value back to us. So um, yeah, still no questions. I'll
I
let you
do
go
have,
back to question
I do
asking,
have one. Yeah,
Patrick.
I have one question. So, one more question before we move on to our next, the next portion of the show, because I do feel like, we've talked about it. We've covered a lot of stuff, and I do appreciate all the things that you've shared. I think that you've really touched on a lot of topics about, kind of why you got to where you are now, or where you were at a certain point, and what things poked through a little bit in order for us to learn about how being an adoptee and how that part of your identity and the Korean part of your identity, and then the initial foundational American part of your identity have all coalesced together. And you came on here and you're meeting us in that same moment of time. Like, we're doing the same things, learning at the same. Well, for me especially, like, I'm starting ground zero, knowing nothing, like trying to get a leg up on some of this stuff. So that leads me all to ask you this one final question before we dive into some even more fun conversation. What is next for Melody on this journey of discovery?
Um, what's next for me is kind of some things I think you guys have talked about. Like, I decided to start learning Korean, and so I actually was doing that before
Nice.
we talked, and so I can speak conversational Japanese. And I thought that that would be kind of a leg up on Hangul, but it's not. It's very different. I feel
I was
like
gonna ask you that because I was like, I feel like the Japanese sentence structure and Korean, like the grammars are similar. So, but like, is it like one of those things where it's too similar and that really trips you up?
No, grammatically, I have no problem with the grammatics because, yeah, you're right. It's exactly the same sentence structure. I have a problem with the vowels.
Hmm.
Like I have
Really?
problems with the O versus O, and I have issues with
Yeah.
everything that's like A. Like, I have
The
a
four
hard
different ways to
time
get
with
that one
all the
sound.
vowels sounding the same, and so and the teacher that I have right now, she went from ground zero too, so we didn't even start with like conversation. We started with alphabet, and then the different ways of writing, and like the consonant endings. And so that's kind of, not to go too in depth with my Korean language learning, but
That's
that
for
is
another
a
show.
yes, that is part of it. I think that part of it too for me right now is getting to know other Korean adoptees through Instagram mostly, to be honest, and meeting other Korean Americans, because I think for a long time I didn't have any Asian friends really
Right.
before moving to Japan. And so for me, it's just being able to, as KJ was saying, be myself and not gatekeep my friendships too. I think that for me, I felt very much like uncomfortable with like Asian American people who were raised with like Asian American parents,
Hmm.
because I didn't feel like I could identify with their kind of like, not to reference Rebecca this whole time, sorry, but kind of to also go back to that whole like, I don't identify with the feality and the
Right.
like, that type of thing. Like, it was another rejection thing for me growing up, was being like, oh well, I would never make a good Korean partner. Like, I
Right.
never dreamt about getting married. I got married when I was in my 30s. I never imagined having a house. I wanted to travel the world. Like, for me, so much of my identity as a Korean American person was, so I felt divorced from what I, and this is my own image issues, is my image of what Korean American women should be like. um And so I think that for me, it's meeting more people, because I think something that is kind of my mantra these days is, we are not a monolith. Like, I am not a Korean American adoptee monolith. You guys are not a monolith. Asian Americans are not a monolith. And I think for Americans, myself included, we very much want to cookie cutter. We want to make it easy. We want to be like, okay, you're this, so we're going to put you here. You're this, we're going to put you here. And I think for me, the more Asian American, Korean American people I meet, the more I'm able to, break down those walls and be like, no, like, you're Korean American and you are your individual and you can be who you are. And I'm not going to make these preconceived ideas, like one of the stupid things I thought all Japanese people must like fish. Nope, they don't. They don't even all like rice, And so it's one of those things where I'm like, I really am just trying to immerse myself within the community. And I really hate that COVID is going on, because I'm at this place, like you said, this beginning of my journey. And like, I'm like, okay, I want to meet people. I want to meet people around here. There's a huge Korean American community in Oregon, and I cannot meet any of them because of COVID. And so for me, I feel very, not stunted, but very much like just trying to reach out online as much as I can, because since I can't do that in person right now, it's the best way. And, supporting Asian American artists, supporting, British Asian artists. My friend is Chinese, British over. And she's, they have this whole fight over there that I'm trying to support called Be Seen. And it's to help fight basically the commercialization of East and Southeast Asians with COVID. So everyone's like news organizations and everyone who is like kind of writing an article about COVID, they're having a real issue over there because they're only basically using East and Southeast Asian people, which is then supporting, hate and racism over there. And so, just trying to support organizations like that with what they're doing and trying to then PR their movements, because I'm not one of these people who, am spearheading something, but I have so many friends who I really love what they're doing. And so just trying to support that.
Yeah. Very nice. Very well said. I will say, if you are looking to meet new Korean American adoptees, I now know 7 other ones, so I can get you in touch with them.
I'd love it.
Melody, really, really want to thank you for coming on the show. This has been a really great interview. I can't wait to listen back to it, because I know there's a lot of stuff in there that just true gems. If people were to go out and find you and follow your journey on like Instagram, say, where can people find you online if you want them to? If not, you can definitely say.
No, they can follow me on Instagram at ohisashiburi, OHISASHIBURI.
Thank God for show notes, am I right?
Because I like to make it really complicated. I like to make it really complicated to find.
Very cool. Well, you can find Melody there at that Instagram handle. And you can find us at Janchi Show on all the social media platforms. Check us out on YouTube for the food stuff that we do, which, speaking of, we are going to go ahead and take a short break and come back to you with mystery item number...
I think it's 8.
Potentially 8.
9?
Mystery item maybe
9.
Oh, mystery item number 9. Man, the number is a mystery. The package is a mystery. Everything is a mystery. Stick around. It'll be fun to solve.
Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum. I'm just saving myself the time. Yeah.
You guys are okay with Robin making lots of noises?
She's a first repeat guest that we've had.
Okay. We are eating mystery item number 9 from Jerry's mystery box. Melody knows what it is. So yeah, Robin is just trying to eat a pop filter. So here we go. We're gonna jump in right now. Here's mystery item number 9. This is exciting. This is onion rings.
Robin. Carbs.
Boom.
Carbs.
Which, okay, here's the deal. Growing up, I love Funyuns. So
I like Funyuns
I'm
too.
very excited for this.
Me too.
Let's see. This is Nongshim, which I love the shrimp crackers, so that's exciting. And it says Yangpading. So I'm assuming Yangpading is onion, but actually that feels wrong in the vocab that I remember.
All right, I'm preemptively giving this 3 stars because of Mr. DJ Yang down
Mr.
here.
DJ Onion.
DJ Yang.
Yangpading, yeah.
DJ Yang.
DJ Yang.
Is it Yang or is it Yang? I don't know. How do you
Yang.
Yang?
Young.
Yeah.
Nice.
DJ Young.
Feeling
wow, they
confident.
have a name. Wonder what the story behind the name is.
Oh, with the glasses off on the backside. This bag tells a story. This packaging tells a story.
Oh,
He
dip.
He turned it up.
Boom.
I like the freckles.
Yeah, I like the onion freckles. Hilarious.
It'd be better if these were like beet chips. Get it?
Oh my gosh. What a dad. Robin did not appreciate that joke.
Yeah,
Robin was like,
Robin.
"Dad."
Boo, Robin. Robin,
Yay.
boo.
Dad jokes.
Bad
Oh,
joke.
don't cry. That was a good joke.
All right.
Smells like
I can-
Funyuns.
How do you say cheers in Korean?
Konbae.
Kanpei? Okay.
It's pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kanpei.
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 I can tell it's not as funyun-y as a normal like Funyun, or
Oh, it's
there's
definitely
not enough
not.
like salt or something on it.
There is.
Nathan's favorite.
It's not as salty and it's not as flavorful
Well,
as a
Good.
Funyun.
It's good.
It's way
It
more
is good,
subtle.
though.
I wish my allergies weren't acting up because then I could probably taste it better.
It's definitely like, you know, the Lay's green onion chips type thing.
Yeah,
Sour cream
that's
and
a
green
good way.
onions. That's like
Yeah, great way
Yeah.
to describe it.
But I will say, I feel like, so obviously Funyuns being the point of comparison, I feel like the Funyuns are super crispy and like airy, and these are more dense. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah.
Like they don't like just break apart.
yeah, like when you bite in half, like it's filled. Like it's not just air.
So I'm gonna
Can
say
confirm. Filled.
The first thing I noticed on the packaging, though, too, is that it does not have MSG, whereas Funyuns do.
really.
I love MSG.
What
So,
is MSG?
just
I just want more of
monosodium
it.
glutamate.
Ooh, I ate that one off the floor and I had a hair on it. Not great, Nong
That's
Shim.
disgusting.
No.
What you're
Just
blaming
Just
Nong
kidding,
Shim
Nong Shim.
for
Just
your
kidding,
dirty
Nong
floor?
Shim. Just kidding, Nong Shim.
You're blaming Nongshim for your dirty floor. Wow.
No, I would never
like
do
them.
that. I like them too. I'm just continuing to eat them.
They're-
Interesting.
yeah, you're right. They're not as salty. I do like the saltiness of
Oh,
Funyuns, but
Oh, wait,
these already taste healthier though.
Nathan, I was looking at the packaging and I got excited because I saw crustacean shellfish, but
It's
that's not one
oyster
of the
shelled?
ingredients. It's not one of the ingredients. It's just manufactured
oysters.
in a facility that also processes milk, soy, peanut, fish, crustacean, shellfish, and egg.
Yeah.
Are you allergic to crustaceans?
No, I love. So I mean, I love Nongshim's shrimp crackers, which I was gonna say.
Oh.
Texturally, these taste very similar. They're obviously
That's-
shaped
yes,
different,
agreed as
but
that
like
as well.
it's the same thing. So if you've had shrimp crackers since episode 2 and you're joining us now for onion rings,
Of course
That's-
I am.
yeah,
So I noticed this on the milk, on the banana milk from last episode, where it said milk in the ingredients was the number 1 ingredient, and then at the end it said contains milk in bold. This one, the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour, and the very last thing is in bold contains wheat. Is that is that what they do on products? Is double label the first ingredient? Like if you're allergic to this, do not eat it. Is that
They
the
double
reason?
label the allergens. So the very last thing will say contains all allergens in bold on every packaging now.
that's why it also
Interesting.
says manufactured in a facility.
Well, I got that part because there's not as much of those ingredients in the actual ingredient.
I like that every allergen is basically on here. Like everything you could be allergic to, they processed in this plant.
Nongshim
Good thing
does
I'm
a lot
not
of
allergic
stuff.
to any of
Yeah.
that.
I also thought it was interesting that this is one bag is 1 serving size, which I think is interesting. Where in America,
That's
this would be
amazing.
like 6 servings
Right?
worth of stuff. So that kind of makes me like it even
Oh
more.
man.
Because I can eat this whole thing. It's only 240 calories.
But if you're doing keto like I do, this is terrible. 36
Oh.
grams of carbs.
Uh-oh.
Oh man.
Yeah,
My mom's
this is
doing
not
keto as well, or has been doing it for like a year.
I feel like for Korean food, keto is actually not that hard. Just kind of cut out the noodles and the rice. But they do a lot of, just like Japan, they do a lot of vegetable meat kind of meals. So
Well, it's a good thing that noodles and rice aren't like a staple of Korean food or anything.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
I don't even think
Mama.
Koreans like rice. I don't know.
What even is rice?
I'm just saying you can make it without it.
I mean, like, what would Wisconsin be without cheese?
This is another thing. I feel like Oregon is really well known for their cheese, but I feel like the rest of the country doesn't know it.
Oh, Tillamook, my favorite.
Tillamook, yeah.
Yeah, I
favorite.
feel like Oregon is good for like
Birkenstocks?
hipster cheese. Not like hipster cheese, but like not like your
Hipster
classic
cheese?
like most American.
What is hipster cheese?
Like the
Is that
indie
like feta?
cheeses.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like if Oregon was like the nation's top producer of goat cheese, I wouldn't even question it. You know what I mean? But like I think Wisconsin is like cheddar cheese, and like some really good butter and
Cheese
like, you know
heads.
what I mean? Things like
KJ,
yeah, exactly.
when you and your wife come to Oregon, I'll take you to the Tillamook Cheese Factory. It's amazing. It's cheese heaven.
Yeah,
I think a
that's
Wisconsin
cheese heaven.
person would appreciate it.
Or they would consider those fighting words. Who knows? My dad's
They
from
might.
Wisconsin. I'll text him.
Oh, you saying my cheese ain't as good as yours?
All my
I don't know
family's
how
from
that's how they
Wisconsin,
sound.
and I'm
Pretty-
still saying that I like Tillamook better. So.
Yeah, Tillamook.
Patrick, I love that for you. All Wisconsinites sound like New Yorkers.
Oh yeah, pretty much
that your
everyone.
cheese isn't as good as my cheese?
Oh, you think
Wait,
this
no,
is
I
your
can't even.
cheese?
I can't even do New
You
York.
guys
That
suddenly
ended-
sound like you're like Cockney accents from
That ended
England,
way
and
more
you're like
British than I
selling
meant
news.
it
You're like
to.
newspaper people, newsies.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
this is on video too, which is even better. Like, people seem to be going, "Oh, your cheese."
Oi, you!
Oh no, you're David
Hey.
Copperfield. More cheese, sir. More cheese. Okay, now my
We've
British friend
discussed.
can't watch
We've
this.
discussed doing accents.
Terrible.
None of us should.
Not good at
Terrible.
them. No, KJ's good at accents.
I think I'm really good at accents, and I think I'm really good at bad accents.
I'm good at bad accents. I'm good
I'm-
at being bad at accents. I guess I'll
Go
say
on,
that.
KJ. I want to hear a bad accent.
Nope. I'm also
Now he's
I'm also
shy.
in that thing where I like thinking about myself and racist or anti-racist tendencies. I'm like,
Right.
are accents problematic? Just all accents problematic?
I think they
I
kind
mean,
of
like,
are.
I think like specifically if you're just saying whatever, then like maybe like if it's not tied to anything, like if you
Right.
just throw into an accent, like then I think it's fine. Like if I'm just gonna talk like this and have not any like type of cultural baggage or anything, you know what I mean? But then if you're like, "Oi, have you seen that guy over there?" and I'm like, and then I start making like social commentary, then it could be bad, you know. But like if I'm just talking in an accent, then it could be good.
I'll say living with
Interesting.
a British friend, we would totally make fun of each other in each other's accents all the time.
Sure.
And whenever she
Who
would
had
do
the
an
better
American,
of each other's accent?
her American accent was hilarious. She'd either go Southern and go like with a Southern accent, or she'd go Valley Girl, which was equally as hilarious.
Gag me with a spoon. That's what Valley Girls say, right?
Yeah.
That's how they
Yeah,
sound.
that's-
They're
that's-
always like,
that's
gag me with a
exactly-
spoon.
Didn't we talk about that with somebody? Didn't somebody
With
bring up
Minju.
Valley Girl? Was that you?
Which that no
Oh. Minju, yeah, I remember.
Oh,
her talking
Minju.
about
Yeah,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
that
yes,
was the
yes.
first time I'd ever heard "gag me with a spoon." And
I
that
know. I was
not-
kind of. I didn't really know
not
what
my
she was talking
reference
about.
point for Valley Girl speak, and I was like, "What?" And then it's like, "Oh, I see. Okay, that means like I took that way too literally." I was like, "Why would you do that?" Anyways, most of that's gonna get cut.
Nope. Leave it in for the podcast, not for the YouTube though. Go to YouTube
Yeah,
if you want to see
I'll
the
keep it in
uncut.
That's hilarious.
Let's start with Nathan, if you can. How many onion rings do you give these onion rings?
They're addicting. I'm still eating them, so I have to at
Same.
least give it a 3.5 to 4. I think. I think I just need that little extra salt flavor to
I
bring
knew
it
it.
up a little higher. Yep.
I knew
What
you were
an
gonna say the
American.
salt. I
Sorry.
like it. No, it's cool.
Your
Yeah.
wife's a
What-
nurse. Low salt,
I
low
know.
sodium.
Well, good. Then she can take care of me when I'm having a heart attack.
Because he was raised in Oklahoma.
That's hilarious. What'd you give it? He gave it a 4.
Well, he said 3.5 or 4. He
that is true.
actually
He did
didn't
say that.
commit. So
Is it out of
3
5
and-
or 10?
It's out
It's out
of
of
whatever
5.
you want it to be.
Yeah, technically
we
it's out
typically
of
do
whatever
out of
you want.
5. So I'm gonna say Nathan gave it a 3 3/4.
Yeah, just like the platform in Harry Potter.
No, that's 9 3/4.
Well, okay.
It's very different, obviously.
Hey,
Melody,
Which
how
house
many
are
onion
you?
rings?
Oh, we're gonna get into that.
I bet he's Hufflepuff.
Oh man, now I want to talk about Harry Potter and that it's not the most British thing ever. Like Lord of the Rings was way cooler before Harry Potter. Come on, Rebecca.
That's also
I
older
give-
though. That's different.
I give this a 3 out of 5. Like I'm still eating it, but being someone
Okay.
who's on keto, I could easily stop. So it's
True.
not like I'm like, oh, I have to finish this bag.
Right, it's not gonna break you out of your keto. If it would, if it was like I gotta eat the whole bag, would you give it a higher rating?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would.
All right. Oh, you go, or I'll go.
Okay.
You go.
I'm gonna say 5 out of 5. I love these things. Nongshim, everything that I've had, which is 3 products, 2 of which were flavored shrimp crackers. I love. So yeah, 5 out of 5. And actually, to contrast Nathan just left. Poor YouTube video. To contrast Funyuns, they're actually like when I was younger, I really love Funyuns, but now they're actually too salty and too like I really need like water and my lips get all cut and like whatever. But these
True.
are like perfect. They're well balanced. I love that they're a little more substantial. And they're not as like flaky and crispy and whatever.
How
as
many Funyuns did you eat that your lips bled?
a single? No, not bled. That would be ridiculous. No, but like just the salt would just like dry out my lips, just like from a normal.
And then they
bag
would
of
crack
Funyuns.
open. That's the cuts.
Yeah.
Okay. I like
Wait,
it.
wait,
Perfect.
No, wait. I
Perfect
want to ask.
5 out of 5.
But what you say 5 out of 5? But if you were on a stranded island and you could only have shrimp crackers or these, which would you choose?
Ooh, the face off.
Dang.
If I was on an island, I would choose the onion rings because I don't think I could get onion rings from the I don't think I could get onion flavor from the island, but I could probably get shrimp or other seafood type
Oh.
flavors on the island. And then conversely, if I was landlocked, I would choose shrimp crackers because I love seafood.
And you could almost spell SOS.
And the dad joke.
This is I love that. Yes,
He brings
that was
his
amazing.
kids onto the show 3 times, and suddenly he's coming in hot with dad jokes.
I am also going to give this a 5 out of 5 for a
Oh,
multitude
dear.
of reasons. First off, it already won 3 stars for me for DJ Yang for the story that he's going. First, he was turning the party up, and then he saw somebody that he knows on the back, and he's like, "Hey, man, you got to check out this jam." So there's jamming out. I also like ease of opening the package. I thought that was good. The same with the banana milk. I like that they highlight the #1 most dangerous ingredient inside of the thing. If you're allergic to wheat, do not eat these onion rings. And last but not least, I would also eat these I would choose these on the island, and I'd actually choose them in the landlock as well, because
Double
I
dip.
almost like the subdued flavor that is not a Funyun. But I also like that it's not I like the shrimp crackers. I thought they were really good, but I could eat these forever and I wouldn't feel like I'm shrimped out. So 5 out of 5 would survive on a desert island with these. Would be alive.
There you go. Actually, I feel like I should say if it was like a one ring battle, a Funyun would win. But if it was a whole bag battle, I think these really win.
Oh yeah,
Going
that was
for,
the
like-
other reason too, because this whole bag is only 1 serving. So that might be a lie. I'm almost positive it has to be a lie, but I accept it, and I'm gonna move forward as that's my truth.
I can't believe it's 240 calories in one bag.
It's probably 50% air.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
That's a good point.
And it's a circle. So
They should
I'm
make
missing
it-
some in the middle.
They should make an
So-
alternative treat that's just the middle part. Like a donut.
Yes. I like
am
that a
old.
lot. I
I
like
just
that a lot.
realized-
Onion donut holes. No, I don't know. What do you call them?
Something about
Onion
onion
balls?
flavored rings
Onion balls.
is a
That doesn't sound
registered
good.
trademark.
That's not good either.
What'd you say?
Like something about onion flavored rings is a registered trademark, and I hope to high heaven that it is just the word onion, because that's what it
yeah.
implies.
I
But it
see that
says
here.
onion and then really small registered trademark.
Maybe it's the onion flavored rings that is trademarked.
But I
Maybe
really
it's
just
the
want
onion
it to be
flavor
onion.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
The
don't know.
flavor of
That's-
onions is trademarked.
That's amazing.
I'm surprised DJ Yang isn't trademarked.
I know, right? Nongshim, send me a DJ Young swag immediately, and I will wear it and eat these at the same time.
Halloween
He
costume.
will become DJ
Yes. I already got the same hair. Look at me. I'm an
Young.
onion.
That's true. You just got to dye it green. All right. Patrick, take us out, man.
All right. Oh, excuse me. I got some onion rings, onion flavored rings in my mouth.
Onion flavored rings.
Register trademark.
Registered trademark. Melody, thanks again so much for coming on to the show. It's been a really great time having you on. If you could just let us know let our audience know more to the fact, one more time, where we can find you at online to follow your journey.
So you can find me on Instagram at ohisashiburi, which I think you guys are going to put it someplace. I also forgot to say earlier, I also hashtag at PDX_adoptee.
All right. Hashtag PDX_adoptee.
With all my hundreds of people following me.
Yes.
With all your 100 exactly people following you.
Perfect 100.
You can find
Exactly
me
right.
in a telephone book from 1998. It will be under my parents' names and will be living at an address that no longer exists.
Yikes. That's terrifying. You can find me at DJ Young on all the socials. JK, I'm at KJ Rocky.
You can find me at Daddy Daycare.
Aww.
Robin does not like your
No.
jokes.
You can find Robin at teething.com. I'm Noah Koto. Say bye-bye.
Bye, Robin.
Robin is like microphone.
Say microphone.
I know what she's getting in her Janchi party.
Well, before Robin takes us out, you can also find us at Janchi Show on all the other social media platforms. Again, one more time, Melody, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you, everybody else out there in the ether that has tuned in, has listened, pressed play,
Yes.
suggested anything. We really appreciate it. Last but not least, please destroy our email inbox, JanchiShow at justlikemedia.com. We want to hear from you. All right. So we'll see you next Wednesday. The end. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you
Thanks,
next
you
week.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.